What could go wrong, as I always say. All right. All right. So the topic today will be the same topic as the first hymn we sang, which they'll know we are Christians by our love and we are all together. They'll, the topic is the same as the hymn we had, which was one bread, one body. We are all united as one under Christ and the church. The sermon is about inclusion. And I always think of God as he's been here forever. Okay. So he's been with us for a long time. And I often think of my favorite example is the King James Bible. The King James Bible is a great Bible, but it's beautiful. I mean, the writing is beautiful, and it had the benefit of the absolute best scholars and the best poets of King James court. But in my estimation, it also had a few angels whispering in their ears as they put down the version of that Bible we have. So God is always with us. He's always been with us. He's always will be with us. And I think he's been with us and has been teaching us inclusion as a goal or really a necessity for a long time. You know, depending on, which time scale you look at, 300,000 years or so ago, Homo sapiens were kind of mucking around in their caves, but there were a lot of different kinds of animals out there back then, but we ended up thriving. And the thinking is we had a more inclusive societal organization. We were better at including people around us. We were better at working with people around us, which allowed better hunting, better sharing of knowledge of grains and fruits and things. We thrived. We thrived in the African savannah and survived all. And there were huge climatic changes that, the population of the world, at one point, the population of humans on Earth was stated in a few thousand. Okay, but we came back out of that. Okay, by 12,000 years ago, we started agriculture, which was the first permanent places where we live, which again required working together with people around us, getting more inclusive, getting more structured in the way we can handle other people and work with other people. Eventually, city states grew up in the Nile and Euphrates river valleys and perhaps a few other ones. And all of these were being enabled by the ability of us to be inclusive of the organization of the people around us to put us together. And I have a saying I say a meadow is more resilient than a lawn. And I proved that in Bonnie Doon because I tried to have a lawn in Bonnie Doon and failed miserably. By the time I had, let's see, emptied the water tank, emptied the well, and burned the well motor out, I proved that it was better to have a meadow than a lawn. So that was a tough lesson, but I got it. Okay. But as time goes on, so we finally get to biblical ages, right? We finally get to times, and at last we start to get written guidance on inclusion that is preserved for us. And and it's interesting to me, and of course I look through the narrow prism of my existence, which is largely Christian and from the Bible. But it's interesting when you look at some of the pyramids and all that. They have writing, they have hieroglyphs, but most of it is, well, we conquered this people, or we got the grain. The grain was this large for this, or we had taxes of this much and this different people. It's pretty cut and dried. But in the Bible, we get guidance. We get guidance on how to live our lives, and it's written down and it's been preserved for all those thousands of years. And from the Old Testament, we get from, let's start at Genesis. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female. He created them. He created man and women. He didn't create mankind of one, mankind of two, mankind of three. He created man. Okay, here we are. Okay, there's one of us. We are one. Okay. What was interesting to me was from, in we get up to the time in the Bible where it's about the Exodus and the Jewish people leaving. They're trying to find a home, and in Leviticus 19, chapter 19, 33 and 34. The alien who resides with you shall be to you as a citizen among you. You shall love the alien as yourself, for you are aliens in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. So I am the Lord your God is telling him, hey, okay. And weirdly enough, in Deuteronomy 10, chapter 10, 19, show love to the foreigners, for you were foreigners in Egypt. So similar guidance coming from the Old Testament. In Isaiah, in verse 49 and, excuse me, chapter 49, verse 6, it is too small a thing for you to be my servant to restore the tribes of Jacob and bring those of Israel I have kept. Yeah. Oh, you're fine. You know, I'm giving you guidance. Get your tribe together, find a place, find a home. That's too small a thing. I will also make you a light for the Gentiles, that my salvation may reach to the ends of the earth. So even in the Old Testament, we're getting this. No, no, no. This is something that goes beyond us. You should live with all. All are going to be brought into this. And of course, when we get to the New Testament, I mean, New Testament is all about loving your neighbor. Christ exhorted us to love one another as he loves us. That's from John 13:34. To treat others as we would want to be treated. Okay, he loves us. He loves us. Obviously, he loves us. That's a marvelous thing. So we should love one another. If that's a bit too much, we should treat others as we would want to be treated, from Matthew 7:12. We should accept one another just as Christ accepted you in order to bring praise to God, Romans 15:7. You know, in all of these, it's clear that God gives us Christ. If it wasn't enough that we we got the Old Testament, He brings Christ to earth to give us, to give us the message. Accept one another. He gives us the story of the Good Samaritan. Help anyone in need. Luke 10, that's 25 through 37. It's a long story. And we just heard about Sean, to accept and help those who have sinned, in John 8, verses 3 through 7. So we get all of this just coming toward us, one thing after another, of how we're no longer going to go to war, we're no longer going to exclude, we're no longer going to hate, we're going to love one another. And we were given it, with the best example that could possibly be the life of Christ, right? So it's interesting also, a lot of the New Testament is letters from Paul, and those letters are to the Philippi, Corinth, Ephesus. Those are not Jewish cities. Philippi, Corinth, Ephesus. The faith is to be taken everywhere. The faith is inclusion. The faith is, it's obvious that when you should love each other. And it's interesting to me that message of love and inclusion was so compelling that Christianity, which was, come on, an obscure and meddlesome cult to the Roman Empire, became the official religion of the Roman Empire by Constantine's reign. And that is not because vast armies came and conquered Rome and put the sword to Constantine, or in this case, in Byzantine, to Constantine. No, no, no. It was by the example of the people living this that it became obvious. Of course, this is the way we should live. Of course, this is the gift that we have been given through this religion, and perhaps other religions. But so it seems pretty self-evident that it's not just environmentally the right thing to do, that you should be a little smarter about who you have with you and get more people to help you to enable more bigger things to be done. No, 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 no. It's a message from God, and it's an explicit message, and it's given to us. Those. So we have the New Testament, the Old Testament. There are some modern quotes I like, and from other religions, right? My religion is simple. It is kindness. That's from the Dalai Lama. And one of my favorites, this is from a Polish-born rabbi. This guy was born in 1907. He died in 1972. So he's born in 1907 in Poland. His early life is World War One. He then goes to World War Two, and he dies before the Berlin Wall falls.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and here is his quote: "Any God who is mine, but not yours. Any God concerned with me, but not with you, is an idol."
Mm.
Okay. Uh, like Kevin Aaron's in the audience because I had to have one philosopher quote for so the Schopenhauer, did I get his name right?
Yeah.
Compassion is the basis of all morality. Okay. And we can think about Sean. Perhaps it's time for compassion, that's the greater morality that we should try and be exercising. And, and so those are modern examples of people that are talking about, again, about how we should live our lives and what are the goals of our lives and what is the best way of living our lives and what helps our lives and helps others' lives. But, but there's plenty of, one only needs to read the headlines to see that it doesn't seem to be universal yet. I had friends that lived in the Czech Republic, and they said they had a saying, "Oh, he's from across the hill or across the field." And what that meant was, by the way, "Oh, he's from across the hill. Don't trust him. Don't talk to him. Don't be with him. He's different." Okay. And I mentioned that once when I was in a meeting in a high tech meeting, and it was a woman engineer, and she was, I think she was from Ukraine. She might have been from somewhere else, but anyway, she said, "Oh, we have the same saying, except we say he's from across the bridge," meaning the same thing. Okay, so we're not there yet. I wasn't invited to this last meeting between Putin and the president in up in Alaska, and I'm not sure I would have been able to do much. But we need something to happen. So what to do? Okay. Well, we can start small. Okay. I'm trying to start small. I'm a member of a small group of people that gets together and, I'm ashamed to say, drink scotch and smoke cigars at times, but nonetheless, and I'm slowly chipping at them, trying to get the group a little bit more inclusive and a little bit broader in its people. But in general, what are you to do? And I'll tell the story. I was at a sales conference, one of these tech sales conferences, and they had a guy, and he was giving. One of the speakers was a guy that he was talking about how to negotiate, right? And, oh, well, that's and it was good talk. And so afterwards, I was giving his talk, and we were getting ready to breaking for lunch, and I was talking to one of the organizers of the sales conference, and I said, "Boy, that was a good talk." And he said, "Well, it should be. He's a negotiator for the United Nations. He negotiates with the Taliban, etc."
Oh my
So,
goodness.
okay. So I found him. And I sat down next to him at lunch, and I said, I enjoyed your talk. I said, we have, and at the time I was in a tech industry, and the tech industry, the particular part of the tech industry, was characterized by having only 5 companies on Earth that made the kind of equipment that was needed to build the semiconductors. There were only 5 companies that mattered. I mean, there were 100 companies, but there were only 5 that mattered. They basically sold all the equipment to all of the factories that were making all of the advanced semiconductors, and there was no one else. So it was in oligopoly. What was funny was they were only selling to the only 5 customers that mattered. So the only 5 customers that were advanced enough to buy this equipment to make the advanced semiconductors. And so I said, so it's warring oligopolies. How can we what can we do? And I remember he stopped and he put down his fork and he looked at me like I was a little child, like he's just patting me on the shoulder as a little child. And he said, "Oh, that's easy. You just find the common values."
Huh.
So, bonk, okay. So it turns out a couple of months later, I was going in and one of the companies, Samsung, if you know Samsung, you probably see their TVs and things. And Samsungs in high tech are kind of Klingons. They're very martial, and they're very at least at the time were very for want of a better term, full of themselves. Okay, and so we went in and they were building a brand new, completely different, very, very difficult thing that they were trying to negotiate, trying to get the build on in their semiconductors. So we went in and I said, before we go in, we're gonna read all the papers that they've published about what they're doing, and we're going to read other publishers about this new technique and stuff. We're going to look at what we do, all the systems that we do, and how they might be uniquely able to help them on the new problems they're going to have because of this radically new, different, hard thing they're doing. So we put together the presentation. Okay, so I go in and I start the presentation, and the head of research for Samsung was there. This is a very high level meeting, and so I'm going through it, and I'm saying, well, we think that the structure will look like this. The one of your papers shows this, blah blah blah. And we think some of the problems would be this. Is this one of the problems you might have? And the head of research, his face colored, got kind of red, and he rattled off something to our guys that spoke Korean. And I said, what did he say? He said he's not used to being asked questions by the people that come to give presentations. He's the one that asks questions. And there was kind of a dead silence in the room, and kind of, and the guy said, it's okay, keep going. And so I went on with the I went on with the presentation, and I asked many more questions. And at the end of the presentation, I said, well, that's what we came to say. And the head of research at Samsung stood up and started applauding. And of course, then everyone around Samsung, like, the point was there were common values. They were trying to do something very hard that they didn't quite know how to do. The common value we had is we had systems that we thought, by at least we think, would be able to help on these particular problems that we thought they might have. And that was so unusual that he stood up and clapped when we left. I believe that there is no situation where you cannot find common values. I think it's very difficult to find a situation where there's not common values. We all want our children to thrive. We all want, peace, not war. There was a great quote when toward the end of the Cold War, and so some of the Russian generals were giving a tour to some of the people. This was during Glasnost. Remember Glasnost, when they were finally starting to open up, and the USSR was getting ready to break up into just get rid of all the USS part of it. So, and they're going past a graveyard and military graveyard, and apparently the Russian general turned to the American general and said, "This is why we need to ensure that we have treaties with no more wars." That's a common value, okay? And we have in our religion, in our Bible, we have so many examples of us pointing toward that, okay? Pointing toward that and telling us to do that. So my sermons are always short, so I will say, we are all one. We are all one. Let's work toward that. Amen.
Thank you, Tom.